Hey everybody, I'm Dave with Growing the Home Garden. I'm in the garage today and I am working on doing a few more cuttings. These are some hydrangeas that actually came from my mom's house. And so I thought it'd be nice to get a few more of those for her. It's one that my dad got her many years ago and would be nice to have some more of around, particularly for her front garden area. But I also have some Lantana cuttings that I'm going to put in, and a friend of mine brought by some Coleus. And so I thought I'd stick a few more of these Coleus cuttings in the same mix at the same time and get some more rooted so we can put them out in some of the shade garden areas. So that's what I'm going to go through today. So when you're transporting cuttings, you need to have a way to get them home without them drying out too much. And so what's worked for me is pretty much just getting a plastic bag, just like this, where you wrap up the cuttings on the inside in a paper towel, and you just keep the ends of those cuttings nice and moist. That's a wet paper towel that I put in and then wrapped all those on the bottom. And you see here, these are the Lantana cuttings that I just kind of shoved in there. They're nice and healthy looking. We got 1, 2, 3 of these. I'll probably have about 6 cuttings when that's all said and done. And then these Hydrangea cuttings, which those leaves are humongous, and that's way too big, so we're going to have to cut those back a bit. Now with these cuttings, the last cuttings I did not use rooting hormone with. And with these, I am going to use that. We're a little later in the season, so I'd like to trigger a little bit more rooting happening. Plus, I'd like to see what the comparison is and see if they root a whole lot better than what the last cuttings did. They all rooted successfully. Hydrangeas, you don't have to have rooting hormone for, but sometimes it can definitely speed up the process. So let's start with those hydrangea cuttings, and we'll go quickly here because we need to keep things nice and moist. We don't want them to lose anything. So the first step with the hydrangea cuttings is I'm going to reduce the leaf surface area, just like that. Okay, so you can see a cutting looks a little bit more like a diamond shape there. I'm just clipping that end off here. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I've got a jar of rooting hormone where I just added some fresh rooting hormone powder to a couple minutes ago. And I'm going to take that and just cover the end, get it a little bit powdery, and I'm going to stick it in my sand. I'm just using like a paver sand or a builder's sand to do these cuttings in. Same things I did the other hydrangea cuttings with. It's very easy to do. Hydrangeas, you should have a pretty good success rate. But I'll go through and I'll continue to stick all these. I don't remember how many I took, but this will not take but a minute to get all this put together. Once you start to learn how to do it, it goes very quickly. Now the key with these cuttings is not to let them dry out. I've made that mistake before. But we're just going to keep on going, and we'll have about 6 hydrangea cuttings, it looks like, when it's all ready to go. And I got one small one right there from the tip. This was one complete branch that I took off, and I just got all those. Now I'm going to take some of this water that I've got in here, and I'm going to go ahead and add it. What that'll do is it will help the sand kind of push up against it, and then I want to make sure that there's a nice amount of sand around each one of those cuttings. You don't want this too moist, but you want it just moist enough where it's easy to put in your cuttings and they'll have plenty of moisture. Okay, so that's step 1 there with the hydrangeas. Step 2, we're going to go over here to the Lantana. And if you check out the Lantana, it's got an end down here that's cut above a node right here. So this is technically an internodal cutting. And then there's another piece up here. I'm going to cut this into 2, and I'll probably... this bottom one will be one cutting, and then this top area will be another one. It'll have an extra node to it. So I'm going to cut just above this right here. So here's one of them, and there's the other. I'm going to strip off the side leads for the Lantana, just like that. I'm actually going to pull off the tip growth off of that Lantana as well, because that will exert some of those rooting hormones and auxins all the way down into the plant a little bit better. And on this one, I'm going to take off the biggest leaf that I have there and just leave a single leaf. Lantana is a very easy to root type plant. Shouldn't have any trouble with it. It, in our area, is not reliably hardy, but sometimes will come back through. In the wintertime, it'll make it through sometimes. So you never know. My mom's had some potted in a pot on her front step area, and they have come back for several years. In the warmer climates, if you're south of Tennessee, you'll probably be able to maintain Lantana fairly reliably. Definitely probably down in the Florida areas, if you're from there. But we just get too cold up here for it to work out. So you see that one there? I'm going to leave those two on it. Pop those in. You can see I can get quite a few cuttings in a very small space here. I'm going to just pull those off, and again I'm going to rip off the tip there and pop it in. Nothing real complicated about Lantana. It's pretty easy to do. Alright, so Coleus is also one of the easiest plants I have ever rooted, and I'm going to just pop off a piece or two like this. I'm not going to reuse the rooting hormone on them, or maybe I'll do a little experiment. Let's see, I'll do one with no rooting hormone, and then I'll take another about the same size, same type, leave about the same amount of leaves here. Looks like I've got 4 on that one here. Let me take off 2 leaves on that, and then I'll go ahead and I'll do rooting hormone on the Coleus. Absolutely not necessary, but for experiment purposes we can compare and see which one is which. Let me see if I can mark that in some way. What I found sometimes when you're marking plants, this is an old mini blind, and you can cut those and it makes a perfect little plant marker. You just kind of cut it at an angle so you can shove that into your dirt, your soil, whatever you're going to do. And if you're ever using a permanent marker, it will fade off of one of these or off of plant markers, so you're almost better off just using a regular old pencil. So I'm going to put no rooting hormone. And mark it, this one right here. That way I'll be able to keep up with it, because trust me, you will lose track of things if you're trying to do any kind of experimenting, plant labeling, all that kind of stuff. Your brain, eventually, you're going to forget something. I do it all the time. So anyway, these will root in a few weeks. We'll see how that goes. The Lantana, probably in about 2 weeks. The Hydrangeas, I would probably want to give them at least 6 weeks. They might root earlier with the rooting hormone. Not 100% certain on that, but the Coleus probably will root in about a week to 2 weeks also. So with these cuttings, I'm not going to cover them or anything. I'm going to just leave them as is in this container. I'm going to make sure that I monitor and keep them wet, keep the sand mixture moist so that they have plenty of moisture to pull up into the plant itself. We're going to put them on the plant shelf back behind me underneath regular fluorescent lights, the kind of lights you'd use for seed starting. And that won't be too intense. The sun's not going to get to them, but it is very hot in here, so we're just going to have to make sure that we monitor them daily and make sure that they don't dry out. And once they've got roots, we'll put them into pots and put them where we want them to go. Grow them on maybe for another year, at least for the hydrangeas, because they'll want to have some size to them before you plant them out. So we'll be back in a couple of weeks with this and an update on it, see how these do, see how they do with the rooting hormone on the hydrangeas. Last time I did them without any rooting hormone, this time with rooting hormone, so we'll see how that plays out. Anyway, I'm Dave with Growing the Home Garden. I really appreciate you watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and please subscribe. Love to have you along to show you some more garden stuff. Thanks for watching.